And we are on to Hunter. Next up is Nagrand Slam, which is a card that was previewed by a very intelligent, very attractive, very extremely competent World of Warcraft player who was the first level 70 on Ner'zhul. This card is really interesting. It's 10 cost spell, which is obviously not something that you usually expect to see in Hunter. So it doesn't go into, obviously, any of these aggressive Hunter archetypes, but it is 10 mana on an empty board that will actually just do 12 to your opponent because it summons 4 3/5s that can attack opponents' random enemies. That includes face. They can just go right there. The Cleft Hoofs are coming for you. You, right now. But yeah, this I think is a very powerful card. Obviously, very difficult to get to a 10-mana spell in a lot of Hunter decks. I feel like the fact that Zul'jin is gone is probably a good thing, because this thing coming back from Zul'jin would mean lots of damage to people's faces. But this is, I think, potentially extremely strong. If you're able to play a Hunter deck that uses it with Kael'thas, you can, like, Kael'thas coin tracking Nagrand Slam 12U on turn 6. Very, very powerful. But it does feel like it's very slow, given that Hunter doesn't have very many good defensive tools to keep themselves alive to actually get to 10 mana, and they actually don't have life gain, etc., etc. So obviously, if you actually get to that point, this is an extremely powerful card. But Hunter can struggle to get there, so I feel like you're only really going to see this mostly off of something like Kael'thas or like Puzzle Box or something like that. Next we have Augmented Porcupine. 3-cost, 2/4 beast. Death Rattle, deal its minions attack damage randomly split among all enemies. So you kill the porcupine and spikes just fly everywhere. There are, a decent number of Death Rattle synergies as well as buff synergies, even like hand buff type synergies in this set for Hunter. This does feel like it's a possibly powerful card. At just killing your opponent, right? Like if you manage to buff this, and they like AOE and kill this, all the damage goes face. It would be really cool to have this with like Deathstalker Rexar with some sort of big minion or something like that, and just like smash them, do like a ton of damage to their face. But yeah, I feel like this is a solid card for sure, and I feel like with the sort of Death Rattle Hunter tools that there are available in the set as well, which there are some. There are a number of interesting synergies with this, so I think this card is pretty powerful. Obviously not like hyper aggressive or anything like that, but it's nice to see, much like Nagrand Slam, some cards that go into Hunter decks that aren't just looking to blow your opponent up. Next up we have Hellbore, a 1-mana 2/1 beast. With Death Rattle, give you a random beast in your hand +1/+1. So obviously can go well with Porcupine or some of the other minions that care about their attack and such. Obviously also works well with any sort of Death Rattle trigger things. This and the Porcupine go very well with like Terran Gorfine, who's a neutral legendary who was revealed fairly early on in the initial reveal stream. This is one of the things that hunters really like is just 1-drops that apply pressure, right, and give you some amount of value. This is like kind of like a fiery bat or whatever. It is worth noting, I mentioned this quite a bit, that 1-drop 2/1s are in a much worse position if Demon Hunter decks are popular because of Demon Hunter's ability to kill them very easily with their hero power on turn 1, not even turn 2. So I feel like in Hunter decks that are able to pressure a lot and punish your opponent from attacking into your guys, that's probably okay. But again, something to keep in mind: anytime you're evaluating a new 1-health minion, I expect at least early on in Ashes of Outland that Demon Hunter is likely to be the most popular class, and they're going to die right away really often. Car driving by. Next up, we have Pack Tactics, a secret, 2-cost, obviously, since it's a hunter secret. When a friendly minion attacks someone, a 3/3 copy. This feels very good with Death Rattles. Specifically, you know, you like Death Rattle, put this with like Hellbore, even like get a 3/3 copy of Hellbore, pretty powerful. 3/3 copy of the Porcupine. Basically, you know, any minion with a powerful Death Rattle, this is especially good with, because otherwise it's just like get a 3/3, right? But if you have a Death Rattle, you're getting a 3/3 and you're getting a special bonus with the Death Rattle from that minion, especially if it cares about having the attack, like the Porcupine. It is worth noting this, they still attack the original minion, and you get the 3/3 copy. So if they're like attacking to the minion, you know, you get a copy, and then you send your copy to smash them too. So overall, yeah, I think this is a powerful card. I think this is a interesting addition to the hunter set of secrets. And you know, a lot of times when your opponent's like trying to like play around various secrets, this just adds like another thing for them to need to think about, and can make their sort of like brain melt a little bit more. And you know, add this to like Phase Stalker world, right? Your opponent has to play around like this off of a Phase Stalker, which can be really annoying if they want to like kill your Phase Stalker. Like, haha, well, I get another Phase Stalker, and now it's a 3/3, and it's going to be, you know, continuing to spew out secrets. Next up, we have Scrap Shot. Deal 3 damage, give a random beast in your hand +3/+3. One of the various hand buff style cards for Hunter. And this, you know, feels a lot like a like Marked Shot, right? Marked Shot was deal 4 damage, which is obviously, you know, a medium amount, like a meaningful amount better. But giving a random beast in your hand +3/+3 can, you know, can be a huge tempo swing. Like Scrap Shot and like hit like, you know, a Tundra Rhino, or something like that, or hit the Porcupine, and you know, suddenly you have a Porcupine who has so many of his spikes to just shoot out and smash everyone. So I think this is a powerful card. Some of the value of this card will depend on how good the damage is to minions. It's worth noting this is 3 damage to anything, not just 3 damage to a minion like a Mark Shot is. This is 3 damage to face. And Hunter, any time that Hunter has a card that can go to face, you need to be very concerned about it, because that's a good place for it to go, especially when you're buffing something which can then go to the face. So, you know, Scrap Shot you, buff my Thunder Rhino, everything face. Oops. I gotta go there. Next up, we have Zixor Apex Predator, a 3-cost 2/4 rush. With Death Rattle, summon Zixor Prime into your deck. So 2/4 rush is a kind of weird combination of stats. This is good at board control of small things, but bad at killing big things. So I feel like the front side of this is actually fairly weak. It only really seems effective against like a zoo style deck. You know, obviously it can be buffed. And once you actually see what Zixor Prime is, which summons copies of itself, obviously wants to go into a deck that is buffing stuff in its hand. Because buffing the initial version means that you can have a rusher that survives. Having more health makes the buffs on its attack more valuable. And then obviously with the Prime version, the buffs on all the copies of the Zixor Prime will end up giving you, you know, that many more stats. So both these want to play with hand buff style cards, which is, I think, why it is a 2/4 to start rather than a 4/2. But I feel like that does make this more of a situational card to put into your deck. I don't know that I would just play this in a deck that doesn't actually also have hand buff type stuff. I feel like it's fairly weak in a you know, just sort of standard mid-range hunter style deck that isn't playing those cards. So if there is a hand buff hunter style deck that sees play, this feels like it's a very strong addition to it, but I wouldn't expect to see it elsewhere. Next up is Imprisoned Felmaw. It's a 2-cost 5/4. Dormant for 2 turns. When it wakes up, attack a random enemy. That enemy can be face. Important thing about Hunter, face. Um, this card feels like it's one of the imprisoned cards that that scales a lot depending on how what turn you play. You play this on turn 2. I think this card is actually quite powerful because say you go first, you play this on turn 2, your opponent gets their turn 2, you get your turn 3, your opponent gets their turn 3, your turn 4, this wakes up and attacks something. This is going to be bigger than most anything your opponent's going to have in play by turn 3, the beginning of your turn 4. But if you play this in the later turns, this goes way down in effectiveness because they are much more likely to have things that this is not great at attacking. That said, any minion that can you can kind of play into to have survive AoE is interesting in an aggressive deck. You could obviously play this out immediately and try and just get maximum damage with it, but also playing this and then loading the board a turn that your opponent's going to want to AoE, it seems like it's actually quite effective, right? Like if you're sort of pressuring your opponent to AoE and then suddenly this guy gets to wake up and smash them, that actually feels like it can be extremely effective. I don't know if this works, if this counts as its attack for the turn. I guess it doesn't. Never mind, I won't get to attack for the turn, so forget that part. Ignore that. Because when they wake up, they don't get to attack. So it's basically, let me start that part over. This is kind of like a charge minion that's just kind of delayed, right? Because most imprisoned minions don't get to attack the turn that they wake up. This guy does. Obviously, it's a random thing, but if you can, set up a board state such that your opponent doesn't have great things other than their face, or doesn't have anything other than their face for them to attack, it effectively just gets to charge their face. And 5 damage for 2 is a lot. Next up, we have Mok'Nathal Lion. It's a Rush Battle Cry. Choose a friendly minion, gain a copy of its Death Rattle. It's a 5/2. So this is obviously a very powerful card in any kind of Death Rattle deck. A 5/2 Rush that can copy any of your Death Rattles. There's a lot of powerful Death Rattles. My understanding is this is also the World Championship card for Lion, who was the winner of the Global Championship last year at BlizzCon, which is cool. But yeah, imagine playing a Porcupine on turn 3, copying your Porcupine, attacking with this, rushing into something, just hitting your opponent in the face for 5 on turn 4. That's powerful. So obviously this has a lot of open-endedness in terms of what Death Rattles it can interact with. But even just in the 100 cards that we have in this set, this plus Porcupine by itself is a very powerful combination that does a lot of damage and clears off a minion, and I think has a lot of potential. So I think this will be a very strong card in Hunter Death Rattle decks. And so far, what we've seen makes me think that that is a theme that's likely to be pretty strong in this expansion. Next, we have Scavengers Ingenuity. A 2-cost spell, draw a beast, give it +3/+3. This is an interesting card because obviously there's a number of cards that key off of their stats. Obviously, this works very well with the Prime. This is, I think, actually very interesting. You could play Scavengers Ingenuity and play a fairly limited number of beasts. Any card that draws a specific subset of card from your deck. You could literally only have Zixor and Zixor Prime in your deck and play 2 copies of Scavengers Ingenuity. And the first one can draw you the Zixor. You get it killed. The second one draws Zixor Prime. Obviously, this is a very, very specific thing, very narrow case. But that's a way you could build your deck, right? You could just play King Crush, and you'll draw your King Crush and always be able to attack your opponent for 11, which is just a lot. But yeah, it's basically, I think, just a very powerful card with a lot of flexibility. You can play this just in a beast deck, right? Any kind of themed beast deck that it's just draw a card, get +3/+3, powerful. You can play it in a deck that has a very limited number of beasts, so you have this very specific pool that you're looking to pull from and buff, and that is powerful as well. So it's a very straightforward card, but I think has a lot of applications, and I think we'll see a very significant amount of play because +3/+3 is very powerful. In terms of giving you just a massive tempo advantage, and obviously scales very well with a lot of things like Porcupine, for instance. Every card combos with Porcupine. That's what I've learned. Well, speaking of of a card that's powerful with a bunch of buffed beasts, Beastmaster Leorox. 8 cost 5/5 Battlecry, summon 3 beasts from your hand. So that's my buffed King Crush. That's, my buffed Thunder Rhino. That's my, other thing. So, explode you. This card seems very powerful, and specifically with the Ingenuity, you can piece together this combo of like Thunder Rhino and just other big beasts to throw into play and kill your opponents, in one big attack, and I think has the potential to be this sort of explosive combo thing in addition to just like a big board presence generator. Obviously, this doesn't draw itself, or you can't draw this with the Scavengers Ingenuity. And you can't really play this effectively in deck with Master's Call. I think Master's Call is actually rotating now that I'm thinking about it, so that doesn't really necessarily matter. But it is a very powerful card in a deck that either is looking to just play a bunch of big beasts or is built around like a burst damage combination that you can set up with Scavenger's Ingenuity into this guy for just a ton of stats in a single turn and really end up sort of breaking the rules of the mana that you can play in a single turn. That's Hunter. We're done.